Hello, today we're going to talk about pruning in an apple orchard. These first trees we're going to do are Tremblance bitter. This is a probably 12-year-old tree on Geneva 30 rootstock. It's a semi-dwarf tree. This is an English bittersweet apple. It's just for cider. It's an apple that's very high in tannins, the Tremblance bitter. It gives you a nice mouth feel to any cider that you add that to, a hard cider that is. A tree that I have a love-hate relationship. I love it because it produces absolutely the best cider from any variety we have in the orchard. It's a bitter sharp, so it has the right tannins, the right acidity, just fantastic flavor. But it's problematic in that it has a terrible growth pattern for the tree itself. You can see this has got this upright shoot. Almost everywhere the tree has this real upright growth tendency, so it's hard to prune it and train these trees so that you get the right amount of light. They're prone to disease, and worst of all, they tend to be biennial bearers, so they fruit every other year. They have a strong on year, and then we finally gotten it down to where we got them to having a reasonable crop on the off year. So we'll prune a little more lightly this year. You don't want to give a real heavy pruning in the year when you know you're going to have a low fruit set. So the basic ingredients that you need to get yourself started, you need a good pair of pruning snips. Voila. Make sure they're nice and sharp. A good saw, a cutting saw, a tree pruning saw. This is a silky saw, very sharp, but very effective on larger branches. And then a pair of loppers for snipping the trees. You also need a good helper dog. Come here, come on. Mr. Kingston here is just an excellent orchard dog. He helps gather all the branches. We've got 3 or 4 objectives that you're trying to achieve here when you're pruning. First, you've got to go around and just sort of look at the overall shape of the tree, because your idea is you want to prune it for light to get into all the branches and for air so that the fruit ripens properly and ripens uniformly. And you want air to get through so that there's enough movement through the air, you don't get diseases and blights, or if you're spraying, so that your spray gets a nice uniform application across the tree. The first thing you look at is, are there any diseased or damaged tree branches? And I see one that broke off over here. This was probably snapped off last summer when it had too much fruit on it and just weighed it down too heavily. So here's a branch that had a little bit of shoot blight from last year, maybe fire blight. It's got some lime on it. We put a lime application on there now, but you can see how it just sort of gives the wood this kind of burnt appearance. And if you don't prune that out, eventually that'll just keep working its way back into the tree and would eventually kill the tree. And then we start by taking out the shoots or the suckers that come up straight up off of the branch. Branches like this and this, they're probably not going to be very productive in terms of producing fruit, and they're going to block the shade or block the light on the other portions of the tree. So we will go around and take all of those off. We've got about 3,500 trees throughout the orchard, and we prune each of them every year. Some years a little heavier than others, but we do manage to get to all of them every year. And we do our pruning, primarily dormant season pruning, January through March, sometimes extends into April. The branch also, with its upright growth, is really blocking the light to this whole side of the tree and will only get bigger. So we're going to take the saw and make a nice careful cut. You never want to cut a branch either that's just absolutely flush with the branches growing out. If you want to leave a little bit of a stub so that the branch can heal and the wound can seal properly. A nice clean cut. Get rid of that branch, and you can see how that suddenly opened up this whole section of the tree. The other thing you want to do is, you can see this branch is growing straight down out of the bottom. So that's not also not going to be very productive, and it runs the risk of the fruit eventually sagging onto the ground, which you don't want. So take this branch also And look at this one, it must have snapped off at one point, so it's growing downward like that. That's probably not going to be a healthy branch. So I see a couple of leftover apples from last year that we missed when we were picking. So they've decayed on the trees. We call them mummies. They can carry bacteria, and you want to eliminate those too. Otherwise, they have the potential of just overwintering the bacteria and spreading it onto the lower branches in the next year. When you get into the top of the tree, we're doing a central leader tree structure. So we want to have one branch that's going up as our central leader. This tree's not too bad. We've got this other branch here that is somewhat competing with the central leader for the other branch. And we do have a couple of branches coming out below here that would benefit if we were to take that branch out. So I think what we're going to do is take the saw and remove that one branch. So there, that opened that up nicely, provides some light into this side of the tree. You'll get better color on your fruits, better fruit size. The adage is you're supposed to, after you finish pruning, you're supposed to be able to throw your hat through the tree. Oops. An adage I taught my son, or tried to tell my son anyhow, is look at the tree, take all the branches that you think you should have taken off, and then go back in and take 3 more. And then you're done. So we're going to try one more time the old throw the hat through the tree trick, and we'll see if I'm successful this time. Let's get rid of this one. This one. This one. All right, we'll try one more time. Yay! And we're happy to give that to people. You're welcome to bring your pickup truck or your car and just let us know you're here when you pull up, and we'll point you in a direction of where you can load up as much as you can carry, and of course there's no charge for it. We're just glad to get rid of it. We push it down into the woods where it naturally decays, but that's all the less for us to haul or push down into the woods. So help yourselves.